The moment Michael Carter walked out of the restaurant, the cold night air hit him harder than the rejection he was trying not to feel, because in his mind the blind date had ended the same way most things in his life did lately, quietly, awkwardly, and without ceremony. He adjusted the worn strap of his backpack on his shoulder, the one that carried his daughter's homework and his own quiet worries, and told himself not to look back, not to hope, not to replay the polite smiles and careful pauses that had filled the last hour. To him, it was over. Another reminder that a single dad with tired eyes and calloused hands didn't belong in glossy places with linen napkins and soft piano music. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected connections, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because stories like this connect hearts across the world. Michael had almost not gone on the date at all. The babysitter cancelled at the last minute, and he had to beg his neighbor to stay with 8-year-old Lily, promising to return before midnight and apologizing for the inconvenience with a sincerity that came from years of asking for small mercies. The idea of a blind date felt ridiculous to him anyway. His days were spent repairing heating systems in old apartment buildings, his evenings cooking simple dinners and checking spelling homework, and his nights often ended with him staring at the ceiling, wondering how long he could keep balancing everything alone. But a coworker insisted, saying it was just coffee, just a chance, just one night to remember he was more than survival mode. The restaurant had been intimidating from the start. The kind of place where the lighting was soft enough to hide flaws and the chairs were so comfortable they made you aware of how rarely you rested. Michael noticed the way the host glanced at his worn jacket, the way he instinctively sat up straighter to seem less out of place. When Eleanor Whitmore arrived, graceful and composed, with eyes that held confidence rather than judgment, he felt a flicker of cautious hope. He didn't know she was a billionaire, only that she seemed used to rooms bending slightly around her presence. The conversation flowed gently, touching on books, childhood memories, and the strange paths life takes. But when he mentioned Lily, when he spoke about being a single dad, something shifted, subtle but undeniable, like a door closing softly. Michael told himself he was imagining it. He finished his water, smiled politely, and accepted the unspoken ending with the quiet dignity he had practiced over years of disappointments. When the check came, he reached for his wallet automatically, despite knowing it would hurt his budget, because pride was sometimes all he had left. Eleanor insisted on splitting it, and that alone made him feel small and grateful at the same time. They stood, exchanged kind but distant goodbyes, and Michael walked out into the night convinced that this chapter was already closed. He didn't see Eleanor remain seated. He didn't see her fingers tighten around the edge of the table, or the way her gaze followed him through the glass doors. For the first time in years, she felt unsettled, not because of something lacking in him, but because of something stirring within herself. She had gone on countless dates that ended with admiration, flattery, or calculated interest in her wealth, even when she hid it behind simplicity. But Michael's quiet honesty, the way he spoke about his daughter with reverence rather than burden, had cut through her defenses in a way she hadn't expected. The hesitation she felt wasn't about him being a single dad, but about whether she was brave enough to step into a life that didn't revolve around boardrooms and power lunches. Michael walked 3 blocks before the weight of the night pressed down on him. He thought about Lily asleep in her pink-lit room, clutching the stuffed rabbit he had won her at a fair years ago. He thought about how he had promised himself never to bring instability into her life, never to chase something uncertain at her expense. Love, to him, had become a luxury he couldn't afford. He stopped at a corner, hands shoved into his pockets, preparing to head toward the bus stop, when his phone buzzed unexpectedly. Back at the restaurant, Eleanor had made a decision that surprised even her. She asked the host to hold the table. She ignored the buzzing of her assistant calling about an overseas merger. She sat there, breathing through the unfamiliar feeling of vulnerability, realizing that for once, she didn't want control, she wanted connection. She wanted to know the man who walked out believing he wasn't enough. Michael's phone buzzed again before he could unlock it, and confusion mixed with hesitation as he turned around. Through the glass, he saw Eleanor still seated, still waiting, her silhouette framed by warm light. Something in that image cracked open a door he had kept shut for a long time. Slowly, almost fearfully, he walked back. The restaurant felt different now, less intimidating, as if the world had shifted slightly to make room for this moment. What followed was not a grand declaration or sudden romance, but something far more powerful, a quiet continuation. Eleanor listened as Michael spoke more freely, about losing his wife to illness years earlier, about learning to braid hair from YouTube videos, about nights spent doing math problems at the kitchen table while bills piled up beside them. She shared parts of herself she rarely revealed, the loneliness behind wealth, the pressure of legacy, the exhaustion of being admired but not truly known. The hours passed unnoticed, and when they finally left, it was together, not as a promise, but as a possibility. Their journey was not easy. Michael struggled with insecurity, with the fear that he would never belong in Eleanor's world, that one mistake would remind him of the gap between them. Eleanor faced scrutiny from her circle, whispers about charity cases and impulsive choices. But slowly, steadily, they built something grounded in respect and patience. Eleanor learned to sit on the floor coloring with Lily, to celebrate small victories like perfect spelling tests and scraped knees healed with kisses. Michael learned that accepting help did not mean surrendering pride, and that love did not have to be earned through suffering alone. Months later, as autumn painted the city in gold, Michael stood in a park watching Lily laugh as Eleanor pushed her on a swing, both of them unaware of how profoundly they had changed his life. He realized that night, the night he thought was over, had been the beginning of something he never dared to imagine. Not a fairy tale, but a partnership built on seeing and being seen. If this story has touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that timing can change and hope can return when you least expect it, please take a moment now to like the video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach those who are still waiting for their second chance. Before this story ends, we'd love you to comment and tell us what part moved you the most, because your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Michael understood something simple and life-altering, that sometimes walking away doesn't mean it's over, and sometimes the most extraordinary love is found when someone chooses to wait, not because they have to, but because they believe you're worth it. The days that followed that quiet beginning unfolded slowly, not with fireworks but with small moments that carried the weight of something real. Michael returned to his routine, waking before sunrise, packing Lily's lunch with careful hands, and heading out to jobs that left his back sore and his mind occupied, yet something inside him had shifted. The memory of Eleanor waiting stayed with him like a steady warmth, challenging the belief he had carried for years that life only took and never gave back. Eleanor, on the other hand, found herself reassessing everything she had built, realizing that success had come easily compared to the courage it took to open her life to someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to hide. They met again, not in luxury but in ordinary places, parks, quiet cafes, grocery store aisles where Eleanor learned which cereal Lily loved and which vegetables Michael avoided because they reminded him of hospital cafeterias from years ago. With each meeting, trust grew carefully, as if both of them understood that rushing would break something precious. Michael still carried the weight of responsibility heavily, always calculating time and money, always aware that Lily came first. Eleanor respected that boundary without question, and in doing so, earned a place in his world that no grand gesture ever could. Lily noticed the change before anyone else. She saw the way her father smiled more easily, the way exhaustion no longer clung to him quite as tightly. Eleanor never tried to replace what Lily had lost. Instead, she became something gentler, a presence that listened, encouraged, and showed up. She attended school events quietly, standing in the back, applauding just as hard as every other parent, and when Lily ran into her arms afterward, Eleanor felt a kind of success she had never experienced in any boardroom. Still, challenges rose like shadows. Michael struggled with the unspoken imbalance between their worlds. He worried about what Lily would face growing up near unimaginable wealth, about losing the simplicity that had kept them grounded. Eleanor wrestled with the fear that her life would always overwhelm his, that love alone might not be enough to bridge the gap. There were nights when doubt sat between them like an invisible wall, but each time, they chose patience over fear, honesty over retreat. The turning point came quietly, the way most life-changing moments do. One evening, after a long day that left Michael drained and uncertain, Lily fell asleep early, and Eleanor sat beside Michael in the small living room filled with second-hand furniture and handmade memories. As rain tapped against the windows, Michael realized that this space, modest and imperfect, had become a place Eleanor valued not despite its simplicity, but because of it. And Eleanor realized that the strength Michael carried, forged through loss and responsibility, was something no amount of money could ever buy. Over time, Eleanor made choices that surprised the world. She restructured her schedule, stepped back from unnecessary excess, and redirected her influence toward causes that mirrored Michael's quiet compassion. Michael, in turn, allowed himself to dream again, not of riches, but of stability, of a future where Lily would never doubt she was loved and protected. Together, they created a rhythm that felt right, one that honored where they came from and where they were going. Years later, on a calm afternoon filled with sunlight and laughter, Michael stood watching Lily, now taller and more confident, moving through life with a sense of security he once feared he could never give her. Eleanor stood beside him, not as a savior or a benefactor, but as a partner who had chosen this life with intention and humility. In that moment, Michael understood that the blind date he thought was over had given him more than love.